The Red River Farm Network is celebrating women in agriculture throughout this month of March. It's a special series we're calling Agricult-HER, and right now we have a chance to visit with Sarah Lovas. Sarah, an agronomist with GK Technology. We're going to learn a little bit more about that, but her background as well. Sarah, let's start off by introduction. Tell me, I assume you grew up on a farm?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Don. And yeah, I grew up on a farm in the northeast corner of North Dakota, by Hoople, North Dakota. I grew up on a sugar beet, potato, and wheat farm up there. And so I grew up working in the wash plant. I think the first job that I ever had on that farm was actually turning used burlap bags inside out. So that you couldn't see the label. They would reuse burlap bags at that time. And so I did that in the wash plant. And then eventually, I did a lot more work in the wash plant, grading potatoes and those sorts of things. Well, grading potatoes is really hard work and it's very monotonous. And so you want to try to do something else on the farm besides that. So I learned how to drive a truck and a tractor and started, doing work out in the fields and those sorts of things. And so it was great. Yeah. And so that's where I grew up.
And you went on to NDSU?
Yeah, so when I started at NDSU, interestingly enough, I actually started in music education at NDSU. Um, and um, and what happened is after a couple of years of that, I loved my music classes and everything, but I volunteered in an elementary kindergarten music classroom. And I will tell you what, kindergarten teachers, they work extremely hard. That is, I I looked at what was going on in there and I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do this. And so I switched. And at that time, I was spending a lot of time working on the farm. And so I switched and I went into egg systems management. Eventually, I got a minor in plant sciences as well. And I did an internship in crop scouting at Reynolds United Co-op. And it really launched my agronomy career. And I can just remember being in the field, learning how to identify weeds and how the systems all worked. And uh, I had some really great mentors there at that time. And it was just so interesting to know how everything worked together and how the weeds worked. And you were watching the little sugar beets come up, and it was just like little miracles when those cotyledons would come through. And then it was even a bigger miracle when they would actually live through a frost in a couple of things. And so I really loved it. And then you really got a chance to help farmers too, and that was really rewarding.
I love that excitement that you have. You've got a real diverse background. You started at the Reynolds Co-op, as you mentioned, but you've worked in some great places over the years.
I have had the opportunity to work for a lot of great companies, and I have had some wonderful mentors in my career. Yeah, my internship was at Reynolds United Co-op. I worked in a lot of different egg retail scenarios, both for co-ops as well as privately owned elevators. I did spend some time, a very short stint, working in distribution. I got to work for two national seed companies. I just had this great opportunity to work for a lot of different companies, see how a lot of different things work, and that's been rewarding. Along the line in there, I did go back to NDSU and get a master's degree in soil science. And what's interesting about that is I would say that that master's degree in into itself probably didn't give me a boost in pay or anything, but I definitely think it made me a more marketable employee. And more importantly to me, it helped me think about things a little bit differently. So when I would see data coming in, or it would make me ask questions about how things work or why things work just a little bit differently. And so from that standpoint, getting that master's degree to me has been something that I've greatly valued throughout my time. I also did farm for about 20 years, and it was a really great thing. I had to learn how to make a lot of decisions. I did end up handling some of the marketing decisions on that farming operation. I made the agronomy decisions. I can remember the spring of 2020. Um, trying to figure out, first of all, do we plant? Can we physically plant? Because the ground was it was such a tough spring that spring. It was so wet. And two, what what can we plant that we're not going to lose a lot of money on? Because the markets were just terrible that year. And then three, how do I manage the inputs to make all of those decisions? And at that same time, I had an independent crop consulting business on the side. And I was watching these struggles with my crop consulting guys too, because they were having the same questions. And I can remember coming up with fertilizer recs, like three different fertilizer recs in the same day for the same field because farmers were changing their minds that much. And it was go time. I mean, these are changes that are happening in May as the planter is sitting at the end of the field, because nobody know what to do that year. So, going through those experiences as well has also helped shape who I am in agriculture today. Um, and it was tough years, but it sounds weird to say it now. I'm glad I went through it because it helped me. It helps me be a better person helping farmers now, I guess.
Tell me about your current role.
Yeah. So I work for a company called GK Technology. We are a precision agriculture company that is based out of Halstead, Minnesota. We are a homegrown precision agriculture company. The original programmer is Darren Johnson. His background, he's kind of like a techie nerd who's playing around with variable rate technology before GPS was even on even a thing. He was working with floaters that you would figure out how fast they were driving across the field and how wide the boom was. So he's been doing this for a long time. And then he was also an agronomy manager. And then the second owner is Kelly Sharp, and he's the one that really kind of got the company to be a saleable product. He was out there really pushing and driving the sales. Um, so I started actually using GK technology and egg data management solutions software back in like 2006 when I was in egg retail. So I've been using this software for a long time. It was actually called Egg Data Viewer at that time. And so it really is a platform where you can work with data, put it together, create zones or process your grid sampling data, and then create prescriptions. And they work. And we can send prescriptions to all kinds of controllers, old, new. We actually have two versions of the software, so we can actually still have the old version, so we can export out to the really old controllers that are still on the market today. But yeah, it's a really interesting company because we are homegrown, a private entity. We don't have venture capital, and our stuff works. And so I work directly right now with farmers, um, agronomists, independent agronomists, egg retailers, and I help them process data, make prescriptions. I create drainage maps. We have a whole drainage platform that's pretty amazing. Um, and drain tile maps, do all of that kind of stuff. I also help people learn how to run the software. And I'm the go-to person that, when you want to figure out how to do something, you call me and I'll get into your computer and help you figure out how to do it. So GK Technology has been a part of my career for many, many years. And now I'm here, I'm working here. And I can honestly say that no 2 days are the same. And you know, our our creativity really is our limitation. And so it really is fun.
I love that. You mentioned, I think, twice mentors. Who have been some of your influences as you've gone through your career?
Oh, that is a great question. So who are some of my great mentors? I think I've got such a long list, and honestly, I have even a title for this. I call them my mini agronomy heroes, and I have for many years actually had that title. And so I think from a business standpoint, some of them would include Andy Blofis was the agronomist that actually first showed me how to do weed ID at Reynolds United Co-op, and Paul Coppin was the manager there at the time. And they really gave me a chance to go and do stuff. That was pretty neat. I worked at Arthur Companies, and I can remember some people there being just amazing mentors. Ola Anderson isn't there anymore, but he really did help me understand a lot of agronomy stuff. And one of the coolest bosses that I've ever had was actually Rick Burgum. He loved everything with agronomy. He would be out running the fertilizer plant in the wintertime. He always kind of wanted us to stop by on a Friday afternoon on our way home from work so he could really visit with us about what was going on. He was a very neat person to work for. I really enjoyed that. Um, I do want to point out some of the women that I've been highly influenced by. Anne Nelawaya was a pioneer in a lot of things. Bridget Riedel, she worked for Corteva, and one of my first um, reps that I worked with in ag retail. Just absolutely fabulous. And I absolutely must highlight Dr. Goose. He was my major professor at NDSU. I had the opportunity to do research with him on iron chlorosis in soybeans. Huge deal. Um, Absolutely fabulous. Yeah, if you want to talk about leadership in the agronomy, just leadership in business and leadership in everyday life, I'm highly influenced by Greg Lardy right now. He's the vice president um, of agriculture at NDSU, and I get to work with him a lot through SBER, the State Board of Ag Research and Education. He's just an incredible leader and someone who really knows how to um, raise people up and help them be their fullest potential. And I feel like I've 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 had benefits from that. Um, oh gosh, the list could go on and on. There's been so many great people that have really been there to really help me out. Um,
Don't you find that during our certain stages of life, we have certain people that come into it, and you know, we may not deal with them today, but boy, they got us through that certain stage of what we were doing in our career or family or what have you.
Absolutely, and I think that really frames it up. Um, I should probably throw my sister out there. My sister is actually the person who taught me how to drive a truck. Um, my older sister, she's actually a corporate jet pilot. She doesn't live in North Dakota anymore. But, we were working on the farm, grading potatoes, doing, all of these jobs. And if you didn't want to do that, you needed to figure out something else to do. And like, if you're going to do something else, you better figure out how to drive a truck. So we took the Freightliner out on the back roads and figured out how to start and stop. And I learned how to drive a truck on a Freightliner.
Wow. So you mentioned SBER. I'm sure a lot of folks are very familiar with SBER, but I know a lot of our viewers may not be. Could you tell us what that's all about?
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I've had a chance to do in my career is be involved in some boards. I take agriculture advocacy extremely seriously, both from a standpoint of just helping farmers every day understand different agronomic concepts, but also advocating for agriculture and also ag research. So, this North Dakota State Board of Ag Research and Education is we are the board that is charged by Century Code with the budgeting authority and the policy making authority for the North Dakota Ag Experiment Station and NDSU Extension. And so within that, we every biennium we go through and we receive stakeholder input to find out what is going on and what's important to try to set the future direction for those entities and so we go through what's called a prioritization process from that, and we carry the budgets forward to the legislature, and we carry forward what could be new new priorities to try to support new research and education initiatives for those entities. And we actually just finished up that process this week. I currently do serve as the chair. um, I, I'm, you know, it's a really important. I'm a very great believer in ag research and education. One of the things that we deal with in North Dakota is a lot of diversity and especially our cropping systems. Um, and without having a research entity like NDSU out there to do research on some of these specialty crops that we've got, private industry isn't going to do that because the ROI isn't there. We don't have enough acres nationally to do that. And so um, the egg experiment station and extension do that. And that is one of our great strengths in North Dakota that provides us stability are those specialty crops. And so honestly, I think when I first got into SBER, I didn't quite understand the magnitude of what it is and what its influence was. It's just that I was a 4-H'er growing up. Extension meant a lot to me, and I wanted to make sure that was getting supported all the way through. And I used egg research from NDSU and the egg experiment station every day of my life because that's the basis for my recommendations to farmers. And so I kind of got involved, and now I guess I'm the chair, and we're going through the process, and it's been definitely a labor of love.
I think a lot of states would benefit from having a system like SBER. It just, to me, seems very unique compared to what other states do.
So North Dakota is the only state in the union that actually has something like this. Um, and um, and I and it does provide strength. What it does is it gives a place to have a unified voice for agriculture to come together and figure out what do we need to tell the legislature for what the priorities are. It got created in North Dakota because everybody from all over the state was coming in and the legislature was figuring this out. We've only got 80 days, and the appropriators, the appropriation committees have to consider a lot of stuff. And so basically, what we're doing is trying to sort of digest all of that and bring it forward in a concise manner for them. And then they get to decide from there. We prioritize, they appropriate, appropriate. And so within that, it has provided a lot of strength, a good unity of voice, and we have a well-supported extension and egg research program in North Dakota. There are other states where they will have boards that will kind of sort of try to do the same thing, but it isn't necessarily charged by Century Code to do that, or and it isn't like a binding thing. It isn't the same. But North Dakota agriculture has definitely benefited from it, and other states should look at it.
So, if someone's looking at wanting to get involved in whatever it is, maybe it's they're a farm organization or county commission or whatever, uh, what advice would you give them? What would you tell those folks to consider?
Well, if it's okay, I'd like to just back up for 1 second, because I've been involved. I'm very proud of the work that's been done on SBER, and that's by that whole board. Um, I'm involved in grain growers, North Dakota grain growers, and I enjoy reading pesticide labels, processing through environmental policies. So that's something that I'm doing. I'm actually the chair of the District 20 Republican Party. Um, I've been involved in Agri Women, Farm Bureau. There's all of these organizations that I've been involved in. The reason that I got involved in them is because I care about what the future I care about the future of North Dakota, and I care about the future of North Dakota agriculture. And I care about agriculture nationally in the United States. So those are the three things. I want to make sure that when my son has the chance to farm going forward, that he has the best opportunity. And so for people that want to be involved, what's your drive? And what's the thing that you bring forward? When I'm having conversations about different policy items or different boards, it's about the value of ag research, the value of ag education. It's about environmental policy. It's about, why do we soil sample? Why do we use pesticides? And how are we doing these things responsibly? Those are the drivers that I've had for being involved in those conversations. And everybody in agriculture has their reason for doing what they do. So my advice is to find that reason, and then from there, um, find where you fit into the conversation. There is a place for everyone. I think the rural areas are pretty good at finding volunteers. Um, it's very rewarding to sit at the table and have the conversation, and I would encourage everybody to do that.
How can we, you talked about advocacy, how can we get out there and really advocate for some of those things that we have a passion for?
Well, I think one of the first things that we have to remember is when we're advocating, everybody has a belief system. Okay. And so when you walk into the grocery store and you're looking at things in the grocery store, there are reasons why products are for sale in there, and it probably stems from a belief system. Love it, hate it, whatever, no amount of science is going to change a belief system. And so it's important to be able to approach those conversations from a very approachable standpoint, and try to understand where are they coming from, because once you open yourself up to understanding, that person that you're visiting with will probably be a little more open to understanding where you come from. So that's the first thing that I'll always state. um, I and so don't stand on a soapbox and do the bully pulpit thing to ram home those ideas, but then talk, tell your story. Tell your story. And there's a lot of different venues and ways to do that. Sometimes it's just working with a group of people in a conversational standpoint. Sometimes it's a policy item where you're actually in a more formal setting. But it's always about telling your story, explaining why things are done the way they are. There's a huge disconnect between urban and rural right now. And so if we can help people just understand a little bit more, I think that's important.
I, Speaking of telling your story, I can't thank you enough, Sarah, for joining us and sharing your story. It's been a lot of fun for me.
Well, thank you, Don. I'm very honored that you guys interviewed me. So thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's been a treat. Sarah Lovas with us. Again, we're celebrating women in agriculture throughout this month. It's our special series called Agriculture.